What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome back to another episode of Found Footage Fridays with my co-host, Tom Raymond.
That's me. I'm Tom. That's Angel.
Is it opposite what you're looking at?
Yes, I think so.
I was like, because you're here on my screen, but you're there on
Yeah.
Okay.
Trying to be creative.
Yeah, we're just so easy to love anyway.
Fail.
Yeah. So, what are we talking about today?
Well, which name do I use?
Let's start with the
Is that a spoiler?
original, and then we'll save the one it was released for us.
We're talking about a movie that, if you look long enough at found footage movie lists, you'll see this one on there at some point.
Yep.
And that would be you say 2015 film, The Borderlands, also known as Final Prayer, which I forget. It's on Tubi now. I forget if it's there as Final Prayer or The Borderlands. Do you remember?
So
Final
Prayer
Prayer
is what you want to search for. But
Okay.
if you have like a smart TV and you search in general The Borderlands, it still comes up.
Okay.
So either or, but if you go into Tubi, because Tubi is very specific about their searches, you do want to search Final Prayer.
Very specific. Yep.
Yes. No extra spaces, nothing. It's very specific. So. Yeah.
So this one would fall into a sub-genre of found footage that we actually don't, I feel like, talk about that much, which would be exorcism found footage. Would you label it as that? No. What would you label it as?
Lovecraftian, Elder God.
Well, we definitely haven't done very much of that.
This one.
But you think it's this is a spoiler, but you think it's one kind of found footage movie, but it's actually another, right? Is that a better way?
I think that's probably fair. Without saying too much too early, it does give you that information a little earlier than some found footage movies, because there's touches and things that they talk about before that kind of lead you down a different path. But it's religion horror or religion.
Okay. Maybe that's where I was going.
Religion found footage. Yeah. I would say overall, and then a sub genre of that would be. We should start tallying how often we say sub genre, like how many times that comes up. But yeah, so the short synopsis on this one is: a team of Vatican investigators descend upon a church, that's dramatic, in a remote area to demystify the unusual happenings. But what they discover is more disturbing than what they had first imagined.
A lot more disturbing.
Oh my God. I can't wait to talk about so much of this one. So initial thoughts before we do ratings.
I don't have a lot of like negative feelings about this movie. It's really well done.
Yep.
I don't know if this makes any sense. I would say one sort of general non-spoilery thing I didn't love about it might be that it's in the way that like a movie like Cloverfield feels like almost too the cinematography almost is too like intentionally shaky camera. You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like the camera in this movie is constantly like, you know what I mean?
There's a lot of put down moments, adjusting. I see what you're saying.
Like really intentional, feels very a bit more sophisticated than a lot of found footage movies that we've watched. That said, that's really the only sort of nitpicky thing I can go to on this movie. It's just solid and scary, definitely.
It's definitely scary.
Yeah.
I mean, so first of all, I'm pretty sure I've covered this before, but like I am so into horror that questions religious boundaries, and that doesn't matter what the religion or belief system is. If it dives into the lore or the stories behind a religion, where it came from, and then takes it a step further and goes, but is it really like anything like that? Is almost guarantee you is going to have a higher rating for me. Because I love stuff like that. And this has a lot of lore, but it has a lot of religious things going on in multiple facets. And so I think that was one of the things that made me love this one so much. And I don't think I really have a weakness, or I don't really feel like there's anything negative to really say. I genuinely loved this one, and I'm glad that I rewatched it before we talked about it, because I think I love it even more now than I did after my first
Isn't it funny? I think it's funny you say that, because I rewatched this, and I feel like a lot of found footage movies, I love found footage movies, obviously, but I don't rewatch a lot of found footage movies.
I don't either, because I don't think a lot of them have a lot of rewatch value.
The part of a found footage movie is the first watch, I think. Yes. Other than, a few in particular. But this is one that I think you can rewatch, and this one's still scary, if there's time in between.
Oh my God, I totally agree. There's some stuff in this that made me like, so it was almost like it was almost like experiencing a first watch again, just watching this like a second time.
There's a lot in this, and it's a good story. It's it's right around the right length for a found footage movie. It's not too short. It's not too long. Right. Yeah. Right in the sweet spot, as we say. But yeah, there's not much more I can say without spoiling everything in this movie. But I think the way you describe it is sort of like religious found footage, but also Lovecraftian.
Yeah, it's definitely it had surprising layers to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is one of the cool things about this movie. And you think it's one thing, it's something else entirely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You go first this time.
For my rating.
Yes.
Okay. So I've already said I really like this film. I don't have much to say complaining wise. So it hits all the right notes for me with the religion stuff, the otherworldly stuff, like all of that is like, it checks so many things for me. And a lot of the stuff that really worked for me, I won't be able to dive into until we do spoilers. But so my rating for the final prayer, aka Borderlands, is this is a 9 for me.
Okay.
Which is probably not too surprising because
No, I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah.
This will be a, just generally speaking, highly rated movie then for us, because I'm going to rate this at 8.5.
Yeah.
8.5. It is a very, very good found footage movie.
It really genuinely is.
I was going to say, always for me, the most importance with a found footage movie, this may sound stupid and obvious, but that a movie is scary. There are a lot of found footage movies that are not scary.
Even good, and there's even some found footage that are good that aren't scary. But you're right. This one, it's weird because like I don't feel like I'm not scared the first fourth of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But as it goes on, this constant unknowing, because they don't give you any answers. You literally do not get any answers until the last 10 minutes of the movie. Literally.
Yes.
There's hints, there's conversations around a few things, but or maybe more than 10 minutes. The last like 15, 20 minutes of this is when you get all of your information. And a lot of that was just executed so well. Like this movie, when I watched it the first time, I couldn't believe I hadn't heard of it before then, because I just watched this for the first time almost 2 years ago, not quite.
Yeah.
And so to just go back in and rewatch it, like it did not lose any magic for me.
Yeah.
But the second half of this is legitimately scary. Like
it's really dark.
It does get really dark. Yeah.
I think what thing I really liked about this movie that I wish I mean, you'd think you would see a lot in found footage movies, but I don't feel like we see it enough, is the usage of practical effects. And in this movie, I feel like all of the effects are practical, and there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
from things falling off, crashing off of the walls in the church, to like the final scene, the body horror, I will say, that is occurring between the two main characters is, I think, all practical effects, without knowing, in detail how they did it. And I just, growing up when I did, most of the effects were practical. And so I love that. I get excited when I see that. And I actually think we talked about before in found footage when, especially a lot of these low budget movies, when they try to do stuff with CGI and it just either doesn't work or the CGI is really good and it pulls you out of what a found footage movie is supposed to feel like, which is like a low budget film that someone found,
Yeah.
So this movie, I thought all the effects were one of my favorite, if not my favorite aspects of this movie.
Yeah, because you'll be able to watch this in 10 years and it'll look just as good.
Yeah.
It won't have aged badly at all because it's all practical effects.
It's definitely a movie I felt like, you probably watch movies like this where there's a lot of scenes where you have to turn up the volume because everyone's just sort of talking quietly. And then there's just like suddenly a ton of noise. I felt like this was
even.
Yeah. So yeah.
Well, and I think a lot, I can't say this is true for just absolutely everything, but I feel like a lot of times that awful volume change is to make jump scares more effective.
Yeah.
And so this does not rely on jump scares. There are startling.
There's startling stuff. Yeah.
But it's not as in your face jump scare, loud sounds just for the sake of being loud. It's all things that play into the scene.
Right.
And that's like, honestly, that was another really strong strength for me was, you had really, really bad things happening that were scary and unsettling. And then you also had things that were jump scares, but they left me still unsettled, not annoyed. I'm not a big fan of jump scares, especially if that's the only tactic that they have. But this was so much more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's spoil it. Let's keep going.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So one of the things we just talked about last week when we talked about The Curse of Aurora was this dynamic of having a female character. So this is all dudes.
All dudes.
It's two Vatican investigators, one tech guy, equipment guy,
comic relief,
pretty atheist, or maybe agnostic is probably the better way to put it. And then we get our priest, who is a main character for a little while, and it's all male. So we get these very unique dynamics because, Gray and Deacon, the two main guys, they have never met before. And Gray is the equipment guy, and Deacon is the guy, ironically, that works for the church. And then his brother, Mark, works for the church as well, and they're there to investigate everything together. But you get this really unique new friendship and this really unique, obviously tumultuous relationship between two brothers. And I loved this concept of, so normally when there's religion horror and it balances the non-belief side, it's usually very black and white. It's it's disproving, it's calling out, it's doing these things. This was a little gray though, because Deacon and his brother Mark work for the church. They believe in God. They're Catholic. They have this belief system, but they're still there to disprove what they're calling a miracle. And that's really unique.
Yeah, that was really cool. I felt like they were all really different characters too, as you were sort of alluded to. The tech guy, is it Gray? Basically the comic relief. Basically,
and he's funny. I do like him.
He's funny, but it was really needed, I think, in this movie because the movie is so dark. If you took that character out of the movie, it would be a grim. Yeah, it is a grim movie, but it would still
be worse.
Yeah.
It would kind of be like Savage Land. I know I referenced that one so much, but that movie was all heavy from start to finish. And it leaves a lingering feeling over you when you watch something like that. And then, you know, when there's nothing like that. So Gray was a fantastic character. I really liked him. And I liked the addition of somebody coming in that's not a believer. I thought that was kind of smart too.
Yeah.
I liked that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, so they've, you know, kind of a familiar trope where there's a video they've seen and they're coming to investigate it. And, you know, it looks really real, and everyone who was a part of it, including the priest, says it was real. But they spend a long time trying to disprove it, and they find evidence that might disprove or to say that it was all a setup. And the priest really can't handle this news. He truly believes a miracle of some kind happened, or whatever happened, you know, in his church, and ends up killing himself, which is a really upsetting moment in the movie.
I knew it was coming, but it still caught me off. You know why? You know what was smart? We don't see the full fall.
No, they did that well.
But seeing when Mark turns around on that roof or whatever and sees the feet, that was so upsetting.
Yes. Very, like, you just see like a piece of his cape or whatever sort of like falling. Yeah, that was really well done. That scene. There's a lot of the town and the area surrounding the church, which is, I know this is just where the movie was filmed. I'm somewhere in the UK. I'm not exactly sure where this was filmed, but the look of everything was just so old and foggy and just grim. It's the word I would
and then you've got like the town youth who literally have nothing better to do than to torment these outsiders.
That scene though, where he just walks up and just pops the kid.
I loved that part because they set a sheep on fire.
Oh my god!
And so like that poor sheep is like, that part was so awful. I felt so emotional about that, and I'm like, these effing kids. And then because they walk by and they're making the bat sounds, try to be funny. Yeah. He just walks up and slugs them. He's like, "It's not funny now, is it?"
Deacon is a great character.
I love Deacon. He's such a broken soul. Like,
yeah. I'd like to see Deacon in some other movies.
Like, I know. Because, you know, when he and Gray talk about that one incident in Bellum, he paints a very different picture than what we learn later is what happened. And it's just showing the weight of these things that hangs on someone willing to question these situations. And he's like, you know, and Gray gets really upset. He's like, "You lied to me. You didn't tell me." It's like, but can you imagine what that felt like for him to know that he's probably, or he is the reason that those other priests lost their lives?
Yeah.
It was really heavy. That was really, really sad. And it really, honestly, it just made me like his character even more.
Yeah. Great character. Yes. And so, of course, you're thinking this movie is one thing. Oh, is it possession? Is it exorcism? Is this a, religious?
You do think demonic. Yeah, no, I
demonic. Yeah, is where I'm going. Yes. But it's not. And at the end, they where are they? They end up in like under the church, right?
Yeah, there's like a part of it that looks like it's like under construction or something, and he pulls all the stuff out of the way, and they like go into like this thing, and it's almost like a castle is what it reminds me of. It's like all stone, and it's descending staircase like all the way down. And then they come out into these like caves, which this plays into like a whole nother level of fear, because like fear of the dark, claustrophobia,
gosh, yeah. What was the movie we watched where I think we did it? Maybe it's another one I've seen. Where like the person's crawling through skulls and
As
bones and
above, so below. We
above,
haven't
so below.
covered it,
We
but
haven't done that
that's
one.
one of my favorites.
We
I
need
love
to cover that one because
that's a great one. Yeah, no, that's a
but
great one. But yes, that was another
totally
one that's like,
claustrophobic in the same sort of way. And yeah, what do they discover down there, Angel?
so as they're going through, they keep hearing Mark talking, which is Deacon's brother, and we're down to Deacon and Gray, and there was supposed to be another priest there helping, but like he didn't really help. And so,
Yeah.
but we're hearing like there's like 1 second where they think they hear him, but they're chasing Mark. That's the reason they keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into this like never ending cave of stone. And they go around a couple different ways, and I think like this is the I think the reason that I could suspend disbelief for this one is because he genuinely is trying to help him. He thinks his brother that it's he's like going down to help his brother, and so that at least gives you a little reason to believe like, oh, it makes sense that they would just keep going. So they keep going, and then all of a sudden everything gets smaller as they're moving forward, and you notice right away that all of a sudden things are not stone anymore. It's like a weird red and orangey color, like dirt, but on something else. And so Deacon goes in, Gray is behind him. And at this point, we've already gotten the lore of, these things that existed before, that predate Christianity, that predate Catholicism, that predate all these things, and the pagan gods of the old days, and yada yada. So we kind of are like wondering where this is actually going to end up, because they never explicitly say one way or another what this is. Yeah. So as they're continuing to go through this tunnel, the tunnel gets really small, and there's this really great shot, all practical effects, really great shot where Deacon's face cam thing, his ear cam, is facing straight down, and you see the thing in front of him constrict.
Oh yeah.
And you are just like
breathing almost, or
yeah, like it's like it goes from I think I know exactly what's going on. This is a really heavy movie. This is bad, blah blah blah. To this just got wild, and then you realize that it's wet and it's pulsating and it's all wrapped around them, and now they cannot get out of this presumed at the time sack of space that they're now sitting in.
Yeah.
This was wild. Like when this happened, my jaw, like.
Okay, so they're getting digested, right?
Yeah. That's so then you start seeing stomach acid, I assume, coming down, and it starts deteriorating, breaking down their flesh, their hands, their devices, and the footage starts cutting in and out, in and out. Yeah. We get these really great shots of them slowly falling apart, which is what you were mentioning earlier. As far as like the body horror stuff, all practical, very beautifully done as far as the technique. And yeah, they're getting digested by an elder god.
Oh my gosh. Yep.
A monster under the ground. That's wild. It was
scary, gross, great ending to a found footage movie.
Yeah.
Very satisfying overall. I will say, I just thought of another thing that it is something that bugged me with this movie. Small thing, but we always talk about why the camera's on. There were a bunch of moments in this movie where I seriously questioned why they were filming at all. Like sitting at the bar and just sitting around the house. And I know they got the little things on their ears and it's so easy to turn on and off, but like, man, they were filming all the time in this movie. And I don't know why.
So I think I agree, sort of. So I think the two like film reasons were, there's like that bit in the beginning when Gray's like, oh, I've only had mine on for 2 days and I don't even notice it anymore. And then, so I think like that was a plug, right? And then I think the other thing was he tells him that they have to film everything to report back. But that only works in so many settings. That works at the church. That works, if they were going over something like the books during in the different times or whatever, that they're not at the church. The bar one was weird, but I will say one of my favorite scenes, aside from the ending, is at the bar. When Deacon and Gray are sitting together for the first time and they're having a drink after they've already met the priest and before the brother joins them. And he's telling them, he's like, no, this is like, they have this really cool conversation about real versus fake. And, oh, you can't fake that. And so he tells Deacon, he's like, oh, I saw the one in such and such place. And she had stigmata in her hands. You can't fake that. And he goes, no, I was there. It was fake and not a very good one. And he tells the story of this mother who cut open her child's hands and feet every day for 10 days or 10 weeks. And then that quote, oh, when I tell you, my heart shattered into like a million pieces. The quote where he's like, oh, and then you know what she said to me when we figured it out? Well, now you can make my girl a saint. And then it like cuts. And I was just like that hit me in my chest. Like,
no, the scenes were great. The acting was brilliant. The writing was brilliant.
Footage movie, they don't make sense.
Right. And I think that's some of what I was talking about before when I said, like, some of it felt too cinematic and too, intentionally trying to make it look like found footage, like Cloverfield, for example, which, you know what I mean? Like, that's a big budget movie that they try to make.
I know what you mean, yeah.
A small budget movie. So, so there were a couple of moments like that in this movie. Not big things. Again, I still rated this very high, but
yeah. Well, this could have been a non-found footage movie, and it still would have worked.
Yep. So for people watching, a lot of folks have this in their. I would say they're easily in their top 10.
It's a great one. Oh, there was one thing that was scary that I wanted to ask. I'm sure you noticed, especially if you've seen it more than once. You noticed the gravestones, right? When? There's a part when Gray is outside, and it's one of the times like what you're talking about where like for some reason it's like the only time he's taken his thing off, and it's like down, and you can see like kind of off to his side or whatever, and he's walking through the cemetery.
I don't know if I did notice.
This got me so good. I was so impressed with myself that I noticed it the first time because I miss stuff like this in every movie I watch ever. There's a part where it pans down and you see this perfect shaped tombstone, and it's got Gray's name on it.
I definitely did not see that, no.
And then it cuts, he moves, and he's like, and then he moves back, and it's not his name anymore.
Definitely didn't see that, no.
It was so good. I love that. I was like, that's so cute. That's great.
Cool. But I like, so in a way, I like that even more that I didn't notice it because I love stuff like that. Like, it's like hidden. You're not fully paying attention. You might miss it. I love that kind of thing.
Yeah, that was so good. So kudos to the team that came up with that because that was great.
So whether it's Borderlands or Final Prayer, find this movie, watch it. It's got to be a must-watch for a found footage fan. It's got to
totally agree. And if you're not a found footage fan,
watch it.
It'll probably be weird if you're watching this, but if you aren't, recommend it. Because I think it would be good for people who maybe are just getting into found footage but love horror. Because, this is like you said, because it is more cinematic, it's not as lower end as far as like the effects and the way it looks and stuff. So I
could see this one in a movie theater.
I could see this one in a movie theater too. It was really good. So yeah.
Well, cool. Thanks everybody. Hanging out.
Our thoughts on
don't know what we're watching next.
No, I don't think so. Maybe As Above, So Below.
I'm all for that. Let's do it.
I absolutely love that one. That is top found footage for me.
It's a crime. It's a crime. We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah, so maybe we'll do that one next. But yeah. But anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us on this episode of Found Footage Fridays. Have a great weekend coming up and a good week. And Tom and I will see you next Friday.
Bye, everybody.